good welcome to you tonight. Glad to see you here. And a special thank you and welcome to Bree Bednar from Family Promise of Rochester. Thank you for agreeing to be here tonight as well. And you'll see if you're here on Sunday or watching on Sunday, Bree's agreed to come speak Sunday morning too for folks that'll be at the services. So Family Promise of Rochester is our justice partner for the month of November. So half our collection will go to them that we collect over the course of the month. And then this is an opportunity to learn more about it and consider ways to become involved as well. So I'm gonna, if you have a chalice or just a moment to, or a candle, or just a moment to take a breath, I'm gonna light this chalice in gratitude for our time together. Gratitude for moments of pause and breath and community. And gratitude for our shared work for a more just and equitable world here in Rochester and beyond. So with that, I'll retire to the background and watch the chat and the waiting room and turn it over to you, Bree, to lead our conversation tonight. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Luke, for having me here. And I see some familiar faces, so that makes me feel better. Thank you all for having me. My name is Bree Bednar. I'm the Executive Director of Family Promise Rochester. I've been with the organization since 2019, although it doesn't feel like it's been that long because the majority of my time with Family Promise has been during a pandemic. So right when I was getting used to the organization and starting to get a handle on things, that's when everything changed. And I'll get into the ways that we have changed as an organization here in a minute. But I wanted to share with you a few facts about family homelessness. I feel like homelessness is getting a lot more attention, especially in the Rochester area. However, not so much on family homelessness. I think it's often the invisible problem in the community. And, because you're not seeing homeless families on the street, you're not seeing them in the skyway, you're not seeing them the way you would other folks that are experiencing homelessness. So I want to just talk about that for a little bit. So more families experience homelessness in the US than in any other urbanized nation in the world, which is staggering to me. A typical homeless family is comprised of a single mother with her 2 children, and we definitely see some of that in the shelter. 1 in 30 American children who are experiencing homelessness are under the age of 5. And homeless families account for 35% of the overall homeless population and 50% of the sheltered population. So that number really spoke to me and reminds me just how big of a problem it is. 92% of homeless women have experienced severe physical or sexual abuse in their lives. And in America, up to 1.6 million youth experience homelessness each year. In Rochester alone, the latest numbers I have are perhaps a couple of years old, but in Rochester alone, the Rochester Public Schools has identified over 400 school-age kiddos who are experiencing homelessness, and that's ages 5 to 18. So that doesn't account for the kiddos that are under the age of 5. So that's just ages 5 to 18. So over 400 of them in the Rochester area alone. 1 in 4 renters spend more than 50% of their income on housing. And that is the crux of the problem. So what causes family homelessness? Lack of affordable housing is the #1 reason. People are paying far too much for their safe place to be. The recommendation is no more than 30%, but we see people paying well beyond that, up to 75 and 80%. And that's just absolutely not sustainable for those families. So that's the primary cause, but we see other causes such as illness, unemployment, you know, accidents can happen, violence, of course, but we always say that homelessness doesn't discriminate. And it truly can happen to anyone. We're all really just that one life event away from experiencing something catastrophic, such as homelessness. And so I'm trying to paint the picture to show you just how staggering of a problem it is. But that's where we come in. I mean, we're doing our part in the Rochester area. We've been around for, I don't know if it's our 20th or 21st year. I keep reading both numbers. So we'll just say we're celebrating our 20th anniversary. And you all know well that for those 20 years, we were providing shelter in churches through our Interfaith Hospitality Network, IHN. And we have fantastic partnerships with our partner churches. We have roughly 40 to 50 partner churches, about 10 of which we're providing consistent and repeated shelter for us. We were asking churches to shelter a family for a week at a time, our families for a week at a time, and that they would choose up to 4 weeks in a year. And that model went on for 20 years. Our volunteers largely came out of the churches, 1,500 volunteers, fantastic partnerships. And we really didn't realize how good it was until it was gone. And so there came 2020, and just as I was starting to understand the job, like I said, churches shuttered. We no longer had churches as a viable shelter option. And so we were looking at many, many, many ways of still providing shelter. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. And it's always a scary time to be homeless. But I mean, I kept thinking, I mean, I was terrified, and I don't know how you all felt, but and I think we still are, but certainly at the beginning when it was so unknown. And I just remember thinking, I just don't know what it would be like to be homeless right now. Like, thank God I have a home to be in and to, shelter in place at. And that really is what drove our mission home for me, was just thinking that through during the start of the pandemic. And so anyway, we provided shelter in any way that we could. So we initially rented space on the Bear Creek campus. It's the old Crossroads College. So we had rented one of their old dormitory buildings for a few months. That was where we were providing shelter. That wasn't really going well for us because our families need supportive services. They need that ongoing case management. And with staff fully remote at the time and unable to be on site with the families, it really wasn't working. Our families just were not being successful. And so we ultimately decided to shift and try some other things. And so we were providing shelter in hotels, Airbnbs, and we even had a family who chose a campground. They had dogs and they really wanted to sleep in a campground, and that was fine. And so we really were trying everything we could, all while still trying to provide that case management, which is just a critical piece. We have generally a 94% success rate, and it's largely due to our ongoing case management services while they're in the program, and then, after they've graduated into stable housing. And so, anyhow, but money was just being dished out left and right for us to be able to sustain that. If you think of the average cost of a hotel per night, it wasn't a cheap plan. We did have some COVID funding that helped with it, but obviously that wasn't going to help us long term. And so we had to really think through, this COVID thing isn't going away as quickly as I think we had hoped. And what do we need to do? And so nationally, I take a lot of guidance from our regional director, from our national office, and nationally, we were seeing a lot of affiliates trending toward what we call a static site. And so we call it the rotating shelter model. And that was when we're in the churches, it's rotating. And then there's the static site model, which is what we do now. And we were seeing, and affiliates have operated static sites the whole way through, but we were seeing an influx in affiliates switching over to the static site model during the pandemic, as really the only cost efficient and viable option for providing shelter at that time. We have learned that we are trying to be a more trauma-informed organization and be more open to, hearing the stories of where the families are coming from and really thinking through their experiences. And part of that for us has been really diving into what it means to be a trauma-informed organization. We still have a lot of work to do, but we have found that operating a static site is a more trauma-informed method, I guess, of providing shelter, because not that you all were not amazing, because you were, but if a family has experienced homelessness and are in the middle of experiencing homelessness, having to get up and move every week, every Sunday, repack their things, put their stuff back in the garbage bag, whatever it is, haul it to the next place. It was a constant upheaval for them. And we really hadn't thought that through, but that became part of our conversation was, okay, if we're going to switch over, we didn't want it to be we're going to do this for now. Obviously, if we're going to buy a static site, that was a big decision and it would have to be something we plan to do long term. And so that piece, or that conversation, was a big part of that decision, why we did what we did. Just realizing that having that fixed place to live, we had hoped that would be a better way to operate. Obviously, every community is different, and we didn't know how it would go with our families. And we're not even 1 year into operating our static site. It opened in February of 2021. But we do survey the families who have graduated into stable housing. I think we've had 9 families in that time graduate into stable housing. Our length of stay hasn't changed, which I found very interesting. Our average length of stay is still right around 64, 65 days, same as it was in the churches. We had thought, are we going to see families just hunkering down because they don't have to get up and move each week, and that absolutely hasn't been the case. And we've seen them really work hard to be successful. And I think a lot of that is because of the space that we've provided for them. And if you haven't seen our shelter, you're all welcome to come have a tour. But we worked hard to make it a comfortable, cozy shelter and make it feel like home, so it doesn't feel institutional, things like that. So anyway, needless to say, it's been going really, really well since we opened. The thing that is not so great is that we don't have, we had 1,500 volunteers, and we certainly don't have that now. I know that the pandemic is still a concern for a lot of people, and so we're just waiting for, things to settle down and for the fear to go away and for things to feel more safe for people. But that will I think that's the missing piece right now, is our families did do well being in connection with so many positive people that care, for them to know that there are truly caring people out there that it's okay to trust. And I think that was really helpful for our families, and we cannot wait to get back to the capacity that we were at before. We do have some volunteers, and some of you even here have stayed the night, and I can't thank you enough for that. It truly means the world to the families. It brings them peace of mind to know that they're not alone. And It's not that we don't trust them. It's that we want them to know that we are there should they need us, should something happen. And I think it brings kids peace of mind too, just knowing that somebody else is there. So anyway, yeah, so we have slowly started bringing volunteers back. And we have hired additional staff. We now have a volunteer coordinator. And if any of you know Kai, Kai is a graduate from our program. She graduated a couple of years ago. Amazing, amazing person. She brings great perspective, having experienced homelessness for, I mean, a considerable length of time, but at least 3 years they were homeless, her and her family. And they were in our program for a few months and then graduated successfully into an apartment. And most recently, about a month ago, moved from that apartment into an even bigger and better one. So they're moving up in the world, and that's fun to be a part of their journey, certainly. Okay, so Family Promise, what else do we do? So shelter, obviously it's our big component. It's what we're known for. It's the thing that has changed most recently. But is that all we do? No, so I'll tell you, we have about 18 families currently on our waiting list. It has dramatically increased with the end of the eviction moratorium a couple months ago. And so what do we do with when our shelter can only safely shelter about 18 people or up to 4 families? We're obviously not solving the problem. I always use the parable of the starfish when I think about what we do. So there's 18 families, and so we'll just equate those to, there's 18 starfish on the beach that are washed up, and the little boy walks along and grabs one and throws it in, grabs another one and throws it in, and the man says to him, "Why are you doing that? You can't save them all. Why are you even trying?" "Yeah, I can't help them all, but to that one," as he tossed one in, "to that one, it means the world." And so we have to think about the impact we are having on lives. And whenever I get downhearted and, or disheartened and downtrodden, I think about that parable, because we are making an impact. Yeah, we can't help everybody, but we certainly are trying. And with that, we're in a lot of conversation with the county, with the HRA, to see what else we can do. We have 18 families on the waiting list. What can we do? That doesn't sit well with us. And so we're in conversation. It's possible that we're going to be opening a 2-unit transitional housing, where if a family has been with us, they're hitting their max, their 90-day, 120-day max with us, but they're not quite ready to get into their apartment, or they can't quite find something that's affordable. Instead of pushing them to bite off more than they can chew, in other words, to take rent that's 80% of their income because there's nothing else affordable available. For example, we could possibly have this transitional unit where we could put that family for an additional 6 months if needed, but that would open up that critical shelter space. And those first 90 days really are very critical for us to spend more frequent visits with the family. And that's possible when we're in the same building, obviously. And so that's one model we're considering. But the other thing is that we are adding a program, and it's shelter diversion and shelter prevention. We're in the process of getting some of grant funding, the grant application process with the United Way for this program. But ultimately, this could really catapult us into being able to help more families. We know that shelter is traumatic, especially for children. Just the process of being in shelter, as amazing as we all think we are and how cozy it is, and they're fed, it's a traumatic experience for kids, just that uncertainty. And so if we can help that family avoid that experience, by all means, we want to do that. And so shelter diversion and prevention works two ways. If a family is already homeless, what do they need to get into that apartment? What are they missing? What's that missing piece? Is it they just don't have a security deposit? Is it they don't have 2 months rent? Is it, what is it? Can we pay for that, get them in there, and then provide that ongoing case management to help them stay successful? If they're in an apartment or house and they're at imminent risk of losing it, what do we need to do to help them stay put? Again, it could be they're behind on utilities. Utility is going to get shut off, and so they have to pay utilities, and so then they're not paying their rent, or their car needs to be fixed and they don't have transportation to get to work, and so they're going to lose their job and then ultimately would lose that apartment, etc. So do we fix the car? Do we just pay down the utilities? Are there things that we can do financially just to help them stay in that situation? And again, we would provide that ongoing case management to them, same as we do to our shelter families. And so we're really excited about that program. But as you can imagine, it's very costly. It's a costly program. It's not cheap to pay 3-4 months rent in one swoop, or unpaid utilities, fix a car, etc. But we do think it's a way that we will be able to serve more families all at the same time, instead of having to, put 3 or 4 families in shelter and then you wait 3 months until you can serve another 3 or 4 families. You know what I mean? If they would all turn over at the same time. This would allow us to serve more families more immediately, and in a different way. We have had one family so far that we have been able to work with at this capacity. We don't have money for this program, but we did have a family approach us. It was last summer, 2020, approached us and said, hey, we're homeless. We're so close to being able to get this apartment. The only thing we're missing is a security deposit. Can you help us? And normally, historically, we would have said, no, that isn't how our program works. They would have had to come to shelter until they could raise that money, save enough money while they're in shelter, and then they could go to that apartment. But situations being what they were in 2020, we decided that, let's try this. Let's put them in that house. Let's fork over that money and let's make this happen for them. And it was seriously the best thing we could have done for that family. The number of thank you letters that I have personally received, let alone the other staff, and I still keep them in my desk as like a reminder when I'm having those kind of rough days. I don't know why I'm crunching on this grant, for 8 hours, like remind me of why I'm here kind of thing. And they come to our life skills. We know the kids well. We know them all well as though they were one of our shelter families. And so it was wildly successful, and it was a great experience for us to see the potential of the program. If we could come across more funding to do more of that, what could that look like? And so we've made it to round 3 of the United Way grant process to get some funding for that program. And that would be a 3-year grant, and would be it would just be fantastic. It would really help us help more people, which is ultimately, at the end of the day, we're proud of what we're doing, but there's still those other 18 families that you just can't forget about, and so, yeah, so we're excited about that. Good things to come, I hope. And then life skills is the other component. So twice a month during the school year, we offer life skills classes for any of our current families as well as our graduate families. We hold those at the Northrop Education Center the second and fourth Thursday of the month in the evening. And we're super excited because in 2022, we've got an amazing lineup of classes that are going to be taught. So we've been kind of flying by the seats of our pants. Like, oh, it's Thursday. It's almost Thursday. What do we want to teach? What do we want to do with the kids? You know, the parents would generally have a pretty good sense, but it's coming up with like things for that middle age group, especially. So we're excited. We've partnered up with Planned Parenthood for 2022, and we've got some fun classes in mind for them, such as loving kindness, you know, things like that, you know, just great topics that I had no idea that that organization even taught. But we had a great meeting with them and found out that they have, you know, a gamut of topics that they can teach on, and many of them are very, very appropriate for the families that we serve. And so we're really excited about that partnership happening. And so, yeah, and then the final thing I want to mention before I open you up to questions is our concert, which is this weekend. So if you've attended our choral concert in the past, it was always at Bethel Lutheran Church. We did cancel it for 2020, but we're excited to have it back again this year. It is virtual this year, entirely virtual. We went round and round about that, but it just felt like the safest option. And so Friday morning at 7 a.m., our concert is a recorded concert, many different choirs and musical groups, even some bands and individual musicians submitted videos to us. And so we have those compiled into a video. We have Kai, who is now our staff, but former graduate, speaking. You get to hear from me. Even I hope you're not sick of hearing from me by then. Let's see, and just all kinds of great music. I mean, it is really fun, and it's different than anything we've done before, because being virtual offered us a chance to reach different types of music groups who maybe wouldn't have been able to attend, you know, a Saturday event. So we're excited about that. That'll go live on Friday morning, and then as will our silent auction. So we have about 50 silent auction items, and you will have from Friday morning till Sunday evening to bid on those. Everything is done online, like I said. And then upon the closing of the auction, we have some amazing volunteers and board members who have said that they would deliver the one items if people would like that. But otherwise, we'll have them available to pick up at our North Star House shelter, and you could have a tour while you're at it. So yeah, so that's where we are. Currently, we have 2 families in shelter, a family of 11 and a family of 3. So we're at 14, and we're entering one more family yet this week or next week, early next week. So busy, busy, busy on our end, but it's going well. It's just been a whirlwind, but yeah. So questions from you. I feel like I kind of rambled and was maybe not consistent, but
No, that's good. I want to open it up. If you have a question, you can feel free to unmute or write it in the chat. Yeah, Julie, please.
Well, I just want to ask Bree, because I just signed up to do a meal on Friday, and it was just said there was one family of 11 that the family of 3 had left on yesterday, the 9th.
Yeah, and they entered that family yesterday. So one family of 3 left, and another family of 3 came in. So I actually haven't met the family yet, so I can't even tell you any details. But I will ask Kai to get that updated tomorrow. Okay. And then I'll also ask her just to send you a message, Julie, so that you know. Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
How big the mouths are. How big the mouths are. Yeah, that's okay.
I'm making a note here.
Okay.
Questions from folks?
Yeah.
I have a question. How do families tend to find you or learn about you or hear about you?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So by and large, what I have seen is that it has been predominantly more word of mouth, which is surprising. We are part of like the Homeless Community Network, and you know, we're in the COC group, the coordinated entry group. And we have a lot of fantastic partnerships with other organizations. But what I have seen is that for the most part, people are just hearing about us. They have a friend that has been through our program. They have a family member who has been through our program, things like that. And we do get a lot of families who call from out of state because they are aware that Minnesota takes care of its people, but especially Rochester. They hear that Rochester has a lot of amazing services, that they won't be alone, that it's a place that they could, you know, relocate their family, that there would be employment opportunities, housing, and things like that. And so it's actually surprising how many people and phone calls we get from families coming from out of state. And even this year alone, we've served several families who moved here from out of state and have permanently relocated to the area. So.
Thanks, Bree. There was a question in the chat from Robin asking if you could say more about being trauma informed and what that means.
Yeah, trauma informed. So it means being aware that every person has had a different story and has had different events in their life and different reactions to such events. And that one thing that's traumatic to you might not have been to me, but that we are aware that every person comes forward with their own story. And so for us just to be sensitive to that we're not partaking in actions or decorating in, you know, what have you, in ways that are going to like trigger that trauma. You know what I'm saying? That's the most simplistic way I can think of to explain it. But basically what we're trying to do is not inadvertently re-traumatize that person. And I mean, we all have different experiences, and it's hard to know, you know, my sloth squeezy ball here could be traumatic to a person, right? And so also just being aware that and being open to letting people talk and hear them and doing so in a way that makes them feel safe. So, you know, Luke, you could tell me, hey, Bree, I didn't like that sloth ball you had. And I can say, oh my gosh, like I had no idea. I'm so sorry. You know, can you give me another chance to be your friend, right? So it's just like it's just a kind way of approaching each other and understanding that we all have a different past.
Thanks, Bree. That was a great synopsis of that framing and approach. Thank you. Other questions from folks? Yeah, Lynn. Let's see. Oops, you're muted there. Let me see if I can get you unmuted.
Here.
There you go.
I unmuted my video, but I forgot to do the so I could ask you a question. Bree, what's the current situation on vaccinations now? Are you still where you can't ask the families or?
Yeah, we can't. And you know, there's been a lot of discussion about that, just even at the national office. The best thing we can do is require testing, but that takes a lot of planning and coordination in and of itself to get that done. And so what we do is operate as though there is no vaccine. The way things were, you know, in 2020 leading up to there being a vaccine available. Remember those days when we just assumed, well, nobody did have a vaccine at that time. And so that's the way that we are always masked in shelter. Areas get sanitized frequently. You know, we social distance if we can, keep families separate, that kind of thing. But yeah, so as far as vaccinations, unless they choose to share that information, we don't ask.
Do they realize that there's many places in Rochester that cannot be employed unless they are vaccinated? Do they know that? They're informed?
They know that, yeah. Yeah, and I think we'll see a shift. You know, I think there's a lot of distrust. Broadly speaking, I think there's a lot of distrust in the vaccine, but the people that we serve don't have a lot of trust, generally speaking. And so even to get them to say hi to me, since I'm not I don't work directly with them, I'm not their case manager, they see me around the building, it takes them longer to be comfortable with me than say it would Nicolette. So there's just trust is just broadly something that we have to work toward with them. So with that, we educate them. I have what is her name? I want to say it's Jody, but she's with public health, and they're coming to do a clinic, a vaccine clinic. They do some education for our people. That's the best thing we can do right now, but we have to do so in a way that is not like, we're telling you that, that's the balancing act that,
Okay.
So it's turning. We're starting to see a shift in mentality. People being more open than were before, but yeah. And I don't know why that happened. Somehow it became a political thing, nationally. And I just don't know how any of that, what that process was. But unfortunately, it's something we just have to navigate.
Right. Well, it's because it limits your volunteers.
I know.
But I like to say that Bree and Nicolette and they have worked through this whole period closely with families and haven't gotten COVID. So that's
knock on wood, but yes.
Yes.
And we are careful. I mean, and for volunteers that do choose to come, especially the safest volunteer position we have, the absolute safest is our overnight position. And Julie, you've done it and you can attest to it. You have your own room, your own bathroom, your own shower. You literally wouldn't have to come into contact with another human while you are there, unless there would be an emergency or the families, would knock at your door, which would be incredibly rare. So it actually is a pretty safe opportunity, and also one that we just desperately need. We worked hard to make sure that it was, when we bought the static site, it was, we knew we wanted volunteers to have a space to go that they would not have to come into contact with others. And so it's what we have, and it's pretty cozy, I think.
You're still happy with it, with everything.
Yeah, I wish we had more room. I wish we could serve all the 18 families, that we have on the waiting list. But yeah, it's a great space. We thought through a lot of things. We did a lot of research, and I feel like we really anticipated, and when you do things like this and make these kind of changes, you can't anticipate everything, but I think we did a great job of anticipating most things that would come up. Some things we've had to adjust as we have gone, but for the most part, yeah, it's going really, really, really well.
And you'll let me know when you need, diapers or anything like that. You'll let the volunteers know.
Yeah, we're actually going back to our the wish list that you would have been familiar with before last year. Last year, since we had just moved, we wanted to get through what we had. Now we've updated the wish list, and so going into this Christmas season, everything is updated to what we truly need at this point. So and it's on our website, and yeah,
I did your email or the one about the gift cards and what have you.
Yep.
So this might be a good chance, since you talked a little bit about what happens there, for Julie or Lynn or anyone else who's here that maybe has been involved and volunteered in the past or currently with Family Promise. If you want to share just a little bit about it, I do have a couple more questions in the chat that we can get to, but I want to offer a chance for Lynn or Julie to say a little bit about what it's been like volunteering, or any thoughts for others who might be considering it here. And either one can start.
It's going to be so different. Julie already has volunteered at the house. I have not, other than bringing some meals and donating some money for meals. I feel it's really worthwhile. Julie's been working longer than I have at it, but it's been a long, many years. It's my main volunteer job with the church, other than being a greeter once in a while.
Yeah, I just find it, I miss being, seeing the families and things like that. We have had quite a few UUs make meals, and I know they're appreciated. But it's nice when you make a meal to find out if they like it or not, and get to chat with them and things. And you can take over the leftovers if they didn't like it. But yeah, so, and I really loved before, reading with the kids and playing games and things. So yeah, my overnight, so it was, I came in and, I could have come in even later, but I chose to come in early because I go to bed anymore. I like to get there before it was dark, and even though that was in summertime. But yeah, I, had very limited contact, but I did, meet them. They were making, a little bedtime snack or whatever. And, got to chat in the morning with one family. One was still sleeping when I left, but, another. And so, yeah, it's
great.
Yeah, it's just, this problem of homelessness is something that all of us, just by the, grace of, whoever, like whatever that, hasn't happened. And I've got so much to be, grateful for and thankful for. And yeah, during the pandemic, I had a house to shelter in and a yard to walk around in, and so just being able to do something, a little something,
We love even more volunteers.
Yeah, but
do
yeah, I
whatever.
know that a lot of people are not comfortable, but as I said, like Bree said too, they have, it's plush compared to sleeping on the blow-up mattresses. It's got a cotton, and they even will supply you with blankets and sheets. I still loved my little sleeping bag, and yeah, it's
Yeah, Kai does a good job when volunteers are coming for the overnight. She makes them like a welcome sign.
And you have the notebook.
Yep, the notebook. She folds their towel like a swan, puts little shampoos out and things, because you do have your own shower. Yeah, we spoil our volunteers because we are so thankful for them, always, but especially now. Like I said, you just don't know what you have until it's gone, truly. And then the other thought I was going to add is, you reminded me, my mom, when I was growing up, my mom was a very devout Catholic, and her favorite saying, and it stuck with me, was, "There but for the grace of God go I." And that is just, I always have to say that, like, yeah, we're all just, boom, I live a blessed and lucky life, but not everybody can. And so just reminding ourselves, that to be thankful for what we have and to give to those who don't have. And so that's why I'm at Family Promise. And that's why my whole career, I'm 41, since graduating college, my career has been in nonprofit service. That's just what I have committed my life to. But yeah, it's great work. And if you have a chance, I can assure you it's safe. Unless there would be an emergency, then I'd have to break my promise. But
Oh, yeah, I wore my mask and they were wearing their
Yeah.
masks and things
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
and they do, they're required to wear masks. But yeah, I mean, it's just so appreciated.
So Kathy Brutenell is
Good.
one of our longtime volunteers, and Robin Taylor is another one, and I can't see who all is on, but anyway, I'm very grateful for the people who have.
Absolutely. Did any others who have volunteered want to add a couple other thoughts before I get into some more questions here quick? Looking for any movement, hands, chats. Okay. Well, feel free to interrupt. So a couple of questions in the chat. One, maybe I'll try to go through a couple of the quicker ones first. How many case managers do you employ?
Yeah, great question. So there are only 3 employees, myself, Nicolette, who is our program director, case manager extraordinaire. And you all probably know her. She's been with Family Promise for 5 years. And then Kai is the volunteer and family services coordinator. So Nicolette is really our only case manager. However, we do have an intern, a master's of social work level intern, who is actually helping us create and launch that shelter diversion prevention program, and we'll be having her work more closely with those families in the months to come.
Nice, thanks. Then what is the ratio of white to non-white or white to BIPOC in the families that you serve?
I don't know the official ratio, but if I had to just throw a number at it, I would say 75% BIPOC. So majority of the families that we serve. Yep.
Yep. And for folks who might not know, that's Black, Indigenous, and people of color, broader term. There was one other. Oh, is it possible to prep meals on site, or do meals need to be prepared and then brought in?
Yeah, no, it is possible. So families do have a full kitchen to use. And so if you want to just bring a meal that they need to cook, we did get a grill this year. And so we have had people bring, all the grilling things, and then let the families do the grilling. We have had people who wanted to cook with the families. And so we've had that before, and that's an experience that the families really appreciate, especially if they can learn how to make something new and different. That's fun for them and fun for the volunteers. So yeah, we're totally open. Having this full kitchen opens up a lot of doors for us. I do want you to know though that families are not allowed to use the kitchen after 2 p.m. if a meal is being delivered that night. We want to respect the volunteers' contribution of time and money and things like that. And so rest assured that you're not going to deliver a meal and then they're going to say, I don't want that, and cook their own thing. We really try, we work hard to make sure that we're respecting the volunteers. So
Great. And I think Laurel had a question. Laurel, do you want to ask yours?
Yeah. My question is a more general question, and just to put a little context around it, it's about how people talk about homelessness. Mm-hmm. So for instance, at my neighborhood association monthly meetings, there's a police officer who will give us an update about crime or things of concern in our neighborhood. And he'll sometimes, and homelessness will be talked about as a problem. People will ask how these people can be moved along or moved out. Someone asked at a meeting, how can these places where they tend to set up camp be made less hospitable to them so they won't return? Things like this, right? And these are pretty well-intended people. So I'm wondering how you have elevated the conversation and the language about homelessness so that it builds respect and compassion into the language, and we can all benefit more from it.
Absolutely. So we primarily, number one, the first thing is that we need to remember to use person first language. And so they're not a homeless person. Homelessness doesn't define them. It's person first. So they're a person experiencing homelessness. They're a family experiencing homelessness that lets them be the person that they are, that they were made to be, without that experience being the thing that defines them. And you'll see that person first language used when we talk about mental health. Instead of they're an autistic person, they're a person with autism, and it's just shifting the way that we talk about people. So that's been the biggest thing that has helped us to shift. And then I honestly think that it's the experience of meeting the people. Because you can be, you can think that that gentleman experiencing homelessness on the street is a drunk and he's gonna smell and he's, all these like stereotypes that people have and that people perpetuate. But when you meet that person, you find that none of those things are true. When you meet these families, you may have preconceived ideas in your head about why they're homeless or the kind of people they're going to be when you meet them. How many cigarettes you think they smoke a day, whatever, whatever the stereotypes are that people have in their heads, those all get shattered when you expose yourself to those people. And so I think that has also been a way for us to shift, is we're asking our families if they're comfortable to share their stories, to let us put their stories out there, to let us record them speaking. Right now during COVID, things are hard to get our families in front of people, but when we can, that is the most moving opportunity. And those of you who have volunteered know that once you have volunteered once, you want to keep returning because you realize the impact you are having on people that are just like your neighbors, just like your kids, your grandkids, your brother, they're just people. And when we can come out of our head and see each other as equal and not elevating ourselves over another or things like that, then that's when I think we can really shift our mindset. And so for us, for me especially, so like I said, I've worked in nonprofits, for many years, but never with homelessness specifically. Housing, yes, but not specifically homelessness. And I'm going to be the first to admit, I came into my job with all my ideas and all the things that we've heard and that the media makes us think in the movies and whatever. And when we shifted to our static site and I was with the families, we basically live with them. That place is my home away from home. And when I'm there, often the families are there, and, you just build some kind of camaraderie with them. You just see them in a different light, I guess, when you spend time with them. And so I think those two pieces would be, for me at least, how my mindset has been able to shift. I'm human just like we all are. We all, need to always check ourselves and ask ourselves if we're being the best we can be. And, I'm not excluded from that. And for me, those were two huge components for me to really understand who it is that we're serving.
Thank you, Bree. So we have one more question. I think we have time for it, if it's all right. The last one was about, so there are multiple kind of organizations in Rochester and surrounding area, kind of addressing various aspects of poverty or homelessness. Just for folks who, not that you have to define all of them, but what would you say is kind of unique about Family Promise's approach or particular to the work you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like I said, we are a 30 to a 120-day program. And so instead of being an emergency shelter where it's you literally need a place to be tonight, people who come to us are really committed to seeking change for their family, to working through their case management plan, to really finding a better path, and so that would be huge. And we do see change in that time. I mean, it's pretty dramatic just having somebody guide them through those steps. There are many things that are stumbling blocks for the families to get them out of that cycle. So obviously employment is one of them. So can we help them with that, employment services, with getting them hooked up with workforce, with, et cetera. Kids in school, just having kids enrolled in the right school. And, we're part of that process. We're there to help them save money and budget. A lot of these families have lived in poverty and don't. And if you've ever done the Bridges out of Poverty training, you would understand that people in poverty are thinking moment to moment, not what am I going to need in 10 days? Rent will be due in 10 days. Well, that's 10 days from now. I can spend this money now because I want this thing now. And so once you understand that, then we have a different way of working with those people too. And so, where was I even going? So, yeah, I got off on my tangent with Bridges out of Poverty. Best training I ever took, by the way. But yeah, so I guess that is for us, the biggest piece is that we offer those continuing services for that family. And even after they've graduated into stable housing, we offer those services. There are other family homeless shelters. So you've probably heard of the Jeremiah program. They do a fantastic job with single moms who have kids under the age of 5, which 9 out of 10 of our families wouldn't fit into that. We allow there to be, a partner, whether they're married or not, doesn't matter to us. We allow families to define themselves as they want to. And that's something I'm really proud of with Family Promise is you define it. What does your family look like? And you go with it. If it's grandparents, we've had a grandpa, his daughter, her boyfriend, and their baby. And that was their family structure, and they always lived together. Is that what my family does? No. But does that make it bad? No, not at all. We've had same-sex couples. We've had single dads. I mean, all the things that kind of defy what we think of as a typical or a good or all those types of families. And so that is one thing that makes us different, I would say, than any of these. We're committed, it's long term, and then we're pretty open for who can participate. They just have to have a
Awesome.
kid in their custody. That's the criteria. Yeah.
Sure. Cool. Well, Bree, I want to thank you for the time this evening, and much more so for the work that you do with Family Promise and your organization and the community. I'm grateful for the connections with the church over the years, and then having it be a focus this month, and hopefully broadening that awareness within the congregation and more for volunteers and other ways to get involved. And thank you for being willing to come Wednesday night, Sunday. This week, you're like a regular at First U.
Well, I've heard so much about you guys. I know that you're a big part of Family Promise. Ever since I started, it was the UUs, and I was like, what is that? And in the time since I've made myself learn a lot about you guys, and I love what you're all doing too, and excited to learn more about you as well. So thank you for having me. And please go to our website if you're at all curious to see our concert or look at the auction. They'll both be available on our website. So go there.
Awesome, thanks. And if anybody has follow-up questions or wants those resources, you can email me too, and I'll get you in touch with Bree, or you can come see her on Sunday.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a
Thank
good
you
night,
all.
everybody.
Yep.
Thanks for being here.
Yes.